Good evening, this is Goldie. It's Wednesday, July 14th, 2010. I'm transmitting from a secure location with a bad connection but a great view and probably the finest custom Pong room in the world. Please become a follower of mine on Ustream. Also, again, please note that I will be doing the next 3 shows from the same secure location. I won't be able to send any email alerts, only Facebook alerts, but they will be happening at 6 o'clock Central on each Wednesday, subject to technical difficulties and some may be abbreviated versions of full-scale rants. So sorry about that. A couple of points. I spoke with a friend of mine, which I appreciate the criticism, keep it coming. I spoke with a friend of mine and he was wondering why I pick on Fox News and not MSNBC, for example. The fact is that Fox is better at its message. Fox generally supports the Republican corporate viewpoint, which is where the major structural problems are. And also, I don't have enough time left in my life to hear anti-Fox messaging, which is what you hear from MSNBC, as well as I don't have the time to listen to them not delve into structural defects in the system and potential solutions. Plus, Fox, they are great entertainers, first and foremost, selling ad time. I love these guys. Sorry about that. I don't have the time to listen to them. Remember the message last week that the sky is falling? The sky is falling because of Obama? Well, on July 13th on the Fox Morning Show, Glenn Beck said that when the Democrats lose in November, there will be revolution in the streets. And this would be by the Democrats, I guess. Now that's what he said. It was completely inflammatory. What in the heck was he doing and what was he talking about? Seriously, besides scaring voters into voting, the message seems to be that the Democrats, Obama, have screwed everything up so badly that no matter what, this country is going down. What a failure Glenn is to his audience. And he is pure message at this moment. A few weeks ago, I started speaking about the BP oil gusher. I used the disaster of which everyone has seen and everyone has an opinion, delve into the meaning of the commons and the regulation of the commons by the government. I spoke of the structural defects that caused the disaster and which will cause many more. Last week, I spoke of the relationship of privatization of portions of the commons with regard to tollways as one example, which contain an element of public interest or commons. We saw that some of the same structural problems of regulation are inherent in the privatization process as well. I want to talk a little bit about the economic collapse or the Great Recession, or as Fox News puts it, Obama's depression. In talking about the regulation of the commons, in terms of BP getting leases and permits and pumping oil out of the Deepwater Horizon, we start with the proposition that we, the people and taxpayers, want companies to maximize the profits, much as individuals maximize their own profits by changing jobs, or in the LeBron James example, changing basketball teams. We want there to be a stable set of regulations under which these companies maximize profits. We also recognize that any regulation at all costs money, and it reduces those profits. However, under the current system of entrenched interests, revolving doors for public employees that are responsible for granting permits and overseeing the production from the wells, and the Supreme Court defined, under the Citizens United case, power of corporations, unions, and groups like the NRA, they have been granted the right to spend unlimited sums on long-time incumbent legislators. We realize that these structural defects in the system cannot protect the commons, which is exactly the true purpose of regulation, not the granting of special favors or the act of allowing BP to write their own environmental report in the Arctic. Okay, so starting with our desire of Wall Street corporations to maximize their profits, the simple story is this. They're young MBAs working for Wall Street firms. They make a salary, and the companies have, over time, figured out that if they offer these neat little things called bonuses, these bright young minds will figure out a way to make more and larger bonuses. I worked for several companies that offered bonuses, and I promise you, we all looked for ways to increase that bonus number, whether it was more closings that month for the home builder, or the discovery of a golden nugget in a huge pile of documents in a lawsuit. On Wall Street, it means selling more securities, creating a new security, and trading in these and many other securities and just pieces of paper. I've heard plenty of commentaries blame the politicians, Barney Frank, Chris Dodd, and others who took tons of money from the large conduit companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and whose CEOs, by the way, made millions upon millions of dollars in bonuses. Now, I'm not saying that these politicians are blameless, as they clearly want to get reelected from the moment they take office. However, the root cause always starts at the money, the bonuses. As Wall Street realized that they could package up mortgages, sell them, and then sell insurance against a default in the pool of mortgages, which insurance, by the way, was completely unregulated, control the bonding rating, since the underwriters pay the bonding agency to get the rating, and then sell these securities, which is what the package, the grouping of mortgages becomes, to Iceland and retirement systems and every other government agency and every other retirement group. Once the rating system, the rating agencies put AAA ratings on these things due to the ability of these companies to package these things in such a way that even though they potentially had the risk of big defaults, that was not shown in the ratings. The interest of the Wall Street firms to make the bonuses then coincided with a re-election message for these legislators of everyone should own a home, which message probably came from Wall Street itself. It doesn't matter where it came from. The fact is that that message coincided with the bonuses and the re-elections. This led to all of the no-doc, no-income mortgages called liar loans to anyone that had a Social Security number. Everyone was happy. The bankers, the legislators, and the people who should never have bought a house to begin with. Then the crap hit the fan. Think Lehman Brothers and the largest insurance writer in the field, AIG. And when I say insurance writer, writing an insurance policy against a default of the security. So in other words, you could buy the securities and then you could buy an insurance policy that would say, supposedly, AIG will pay you if you have a loss. The defaults started happening. The off-the-books insurance started paying off. In other words, people were making claims against these insurance policies. And the emotional character of the country changed to pessimism. Once that happened, people who thought they could always refinance or sell their homes realized that they could do neither. And prices of homes started to plummet below the principal amount of the mortgages. What it means when they say that you are underwater. At that point, it was all over. So this was really starting in September of 2008, which was the beginning of the large calamity. The attempts to collect on the AIG insurance policies and the Lehman Brothers insurance policies led to the Lehman bankruptcy and the government takeover of AIG. All types of lending dried up. Everybody got scared. The types were, of course, interbank, consumer loans, car loans, credit card loans, commercial real estate loans, regular commercial loans, commercial paper. Once the lending dried up, it was over, and the entire economy collapsed. It was shown to be what it was, a house of cards. Now let's go back and do a quick review of the commons, which is defined as air, land, water, and to that we have added oil leases and transportation methods like tollways. In all of these examples, there's a public interest that must, I repeat, must be protected by the government, no matter the party in power. I will now add to that list of commons the public interest of the banking system of deposits and credit. Contrary to what you hear in the news, the idea of a financial reform bill is the attempt, subject of course to gigantic corporate lobbying, it's the attempt to keep the interest of the public in the banking system from being sucked down the drain with the gambling part of banking. Remember the bonuses and the products created by the MBAs. Remember, these guys use the implicit backing of the federal government to gamble. That's what they were doing. They were gambling to make bonuses. And they knew that the federal government wouldn't allow the banking system to fail, which they didn't. So it appears that there is another commons. And as I said, the same structural regulatory defect of the regulated writing, the regulated writing the regulations, just like with BP permits and leases and the privatizations. The Secretary of the Treasury and the members of the Federal Reserve, all come from the industry. And they all go back to the industry after they're done. the revolving door. That is the killer app for regulating our commons. My solution again is, and sorry to have to repeat this to my longtime listeners, but my solution is a constitutional amendment for term limits for senators and House members, a total prohibition on the revolving door between government and the regulated industry, and a redefinition of person to exclude corporations and other entities from being allowed to donate anything to any political races, following the Roberts Supreme Court Citizen United case from a few months ago. Interestingly, it appears that this exact same structural regulatory defect as I spoke of with BP and the privatizations was the cause of this current economic collapse. And it's not like this didn't happen before. Just look at the S&L deregulation of Reagan's era, which led to the late 80s economic disaster. That department sucked a huge amount of taxpayer money into rescuing the commons. In that case, the S&L system and the loans they made and deposits they had taken. Since the MBAs don't learn from their mistakes or care to learn, it's our duty to change the regulatory system so that the commons of the banking system does not get abused by the guys wanting bigger bonuses on Wall Street, no matter what they say and claim about the need to compete in the world with the creation and marketing of these exotic and extremely risky products. We do want them to come up with new products and ways to make things happen, but when it affects a community interest or a commons, we have the right to regulate it correctly, which it seems we are unable to do. Moving on, there's a July 13th, 2010 New York Times article entitled "Beyond Guns, NRA Expands Political Agenda." This is a frightening look at the very public attempts of the NRA to extort, and I'll say that word, extort, whatever they want from legislators, be it positions on health care, campaign finance, credit card regulation, and Supreme Court nominees. This is all as set forth in the article, which I suggest that you read. This is the best example of the far-reaching nature of large, well-financed lobbying groups controlling debate. These guys have even created the loophole. They're the ones that created the loophole in the Disclose Bill, which was Congress's attempt to put some regulation into the Supreme Court's failure in the Citizens United case, which allowed unlimited spending by these types of groups. And Congress had tried to come up with something called the Disclose Bill, and now it's so full of holes it's completely useless. It started with the NRA. Now, let's look for a second at the article that I pulled from July 13th, 2010 New York Times, and this one was "Drug Maker Hid Data Regarding a Diabetes Drug, Avandia." It might be recalled due to withheld facts of the dangers of the drug, and these were withheld for 10 to 12 years. Talk about the drug companies, writing the regulations. It is the drug companies themselves that do the drug studies and then hand those studies to the FDA for approval. If they withhold negative data, they're subject to fines and lawsuits. While this sounds just like BP writing their own EPA review, I do admit it is a slightly different situation than the other industries that I've been laboring over. We, the public, have an interest in even unproven and potentially dangerous drugs coming to the market quickly to save our dying mothers and fathers. So it is a slightly different thing in that so long as people get full disclosure as to what these drugs might do, and we don't hear claims that it's perfectly safe, there is a slightly different interest in drug companies doing their own testing than with BP or privatizations. Now, I'll go ahead and speak more of this when we re-delve into healthcare, but I just kind of wanted to bring up that particular article because it was very interesting that they also write their own, they do their own studies because we don't have the capacity as a government to do those studies. I want to digress a little, again, to a concept called personal responsibility, which you hear a lot about, especially from supply-siders. And I want to relate that to our declining standard of living. I personally believe that all the services provided by our government, including health care, Social Security, and the like, will not be here in their present form in the future. Now, I'm not trying to be an alarmist, I'm just trying to be realistic. Let's look at the concept of a standard of living. Instead of using dollar numbers of salaries or cost of items between time periods, we can generally look at what the average person was able to do in the past with what they made and what they're able to do in the present with what they make. Starting in the late 1940s and early 1950s, men were able to get jobs, get married, have children. The wife could stay home and be home when the kids came home from school. The kids could go to college, and the family could buy a house, take vacations, and save money. The good old days, glory days. Without coming up with the actual cause of the phrase declining standard of living, we know that when OPEC quadrupled the price of oil in 1974, a huge amount of wealth was transferred to the oil-producing countries. And that wealth came out of the pockets of energy users, us. Families started to need two incomes to keep up the same standard of living, of vacations, college, savings, and daycare. So you can now see an actual example of a declining standard of living and what it means. People threaten it all the time. We're going to have a declining standard of living. Nobody really knows what it means, because the dollar amount that you make might be 3 to 4 times what you made 10 years ago, but yet you're getting farther behind. Just think what might happen to that standard of living when the United States' biggest lender, China, calls in the loans, treasuries, and we have to cut government services like Greece just did. Just think about that. We'll have to cut what we get. Looking at the concept of personal responsibility, I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine who was forced to listen to my summary of healthcare, and he, being 28 years old, he lit up a cigarette. I was watching him light up the cigarette, and he's an athlete, and I asked him why he did it, and you know, he can't stop, really. I then realized one of the things that you can do as a part of your personal responsibility is to stop overeating and smoking cigarettes. Since, due to the declining standard of living, services and expensive chemo, as we talked about a few weeks ago, will be cut in the future, we must all use the concept of personal responsibility to limit our health care costs in the future and keep us healthier and wealthier, hopefully. Personal responsibility also comes up in the economic collapse, where people just went ahead and lied on their loan applications because everyone was doing it. Never mind the 10 years in jail and the $1 million fine for fraudulent applications to a federally insured institution. You have to read the documents. Additionally, the failure of the lenders to pursue the deficiencies in these home loans. In other words, if you borrowed $200,000 and the house is sold at foreclosure for $150,000, you owe the $50,000, at least in Texas. They're not enforcing that $50,000. And this is leading to a huge disincentive for borrowers to care about what location the house is in or any other factors. I mean, why not take out a loan if there's no risk? If the paper you signed, they're not going to enforce it. The risk needs to return, and with it, the concept of personal responsibility. A July 9th, 2010 letter to the editor in the Austin Chronicle highlights the concept in a separate way with the idea that as a bicyclist, you need to be responsible for your own safety and not rely on the new city ordinance that mandates that cars need to stay 3 feet away from bicyclists, which they only sometimes do anyway. Similar to wearing a helmet. Why would you not wear a helmet? It's going to be cheaper. Even if you have a deductible and you fall off and you crack your head, why would you want that? Now, as I stated in an earlier rant, sorry about the noises. As I stated in an earlier rant, if you can't figure out how to pay for your child's education, healthcare, and food, don't have a child. This is the ultimate in personal responsibility. Don't just have the child, or 8 children, and then expect society to take care of you and your children. As I've said, I'm willing, someone who does not have children, to pay for 2 of your children's public education, but no more. Today's discussion of the declining standard of living hammers home the idea that you need to assume that future governmental assistance of all kinds will be unavailable, or certainly limited, for your extra mouths to feed. So you better take personal responsibility and know how you're going to pay for your child's upbringing. Use birth control. Okay, moving over to my privacy surveillance camera rant. There's a July 9th, 2010 article in the Statesman entitled, "Do DWI Laws Need Rehab?" And one of the Mothers Against Drunk Driving items that is again going to put into play is sobriety checkpoints. I hate these things. A sobriety checkpoint is where every car is pulled over and checked for drunk drivers, the innocent as well as the guilty. They propose pulling over every car to avoid a racial profiling claim or other unequal due process argument. Think, think, think. This is exactly the same thing as the surveillance camera argument. My privacy is a fundamental right, and you don't have a capital R right to tell the government to intrude upon me when I'm doing nothing wrong. It's like the statement, and this is what I've been saying about it, it's like, value papers. I don't want our country to have checkpoints or cameras looking into every living room, no matter what you mad Mothers Against Drunk Driving people or law and order types might think. Especially in Texas. Don't pull me over unless I'm breaking the law, and get off my property. And I mean with your cameras. And that is one thing that I absolutely love about the Texas attitude. We don't want our country to look like that, where everybody's being pulled over, everybody's being surveilled. Think, it's too fundamental. Supplementing my immigration rant, a good friend of mine, Paulie, says that a wall can't be built high enough that will keep people from trying to get jobs in this country. I disagree, by the way, Paulie. And that's not a reason to not build a wall. Remember, it turns out that you can only have a path to citizenship efficiently. You can only have an efficient path if we get our arms around the total number of people that will be allowed to get on that path. So I hate to say it, Paulie, but I just don't, I think there have been walls before in the past that have worked. And I'm going to say something that really, actually, truly has bothered me and is bothering me. It's really, really bothering me. Religious intolerance, okay? When I see on TV religious intolerance, or read about it, or hear about it, it shows your ignorance. It shows you to be ignorant. So now I am talking down to you people who think that there are types of religious intolerance that are okay. There aren't any. There seems to be a huge anti-mosque movement going on in this country, and Fox News is at the forefront of it. By the way, Fox had a commentator on after the Times Square bomber, you know, that attempted bombing. And they said that it was okay to, this particular commentary said, I think it's okay to religiously profile Muslims. Potentially the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Her partner there, at least, for a change, reminded her that she has admitted that she has a Quran at home. Religious freedom is a fundamental right. So the big question becomes, is Fox doing this for entertainment, advertising dollars, or truly to inflame? I don't know where this is coming from, but it's scary. It scares me. I mean, it seems that right-wing Christians, certain right-wing Christians, I'm not putting everybody in there, but the ones that are outspoken about religious intolerance, they want to erode the very fundamental civil rights that could be used against them if another religion came into the majority in this country. That's the way it always is. You cannot erode these fundamental rights because at some point you might be in the minority. You might be the person being pulled over. You might be the person who, if you have a Bible at home, people are breaking into your home and questioning you to see whether or not you're a extremist or not, a terrorist. That one really bugs me, and I'm going to keep an eyeball on that for you. Now, this is an abbreviated rant. Sorry, I'm on vacation, but I do want to thank all of our sponsors, most of which disagree with one or more of my stands, but they all say, keep talking. PianoByAngelo.com, Angelo Limbesis, who teaches and plays keyboards. zitadesign.com, that's Z-I-T-A design.com, for all of your decorative painting needs. She can make anything look like anything, I promise. AustinAreaPlumbing.com for all of your plumbing needs. TicoAdventureLodge.com, T-I-C-O AdventureLodge.com, a small hotel in Samara, Costa Rica, near an excellent learn-to-surf beach. La Vela Latina, a great sunset restaurant in Samara, Costa Rica, and Amhar Tequila. And they're at santospirits.com, S-A-N-T-O spirits.com. It's an extremely smooth tequila. Also, I want to go ahead and answer another frequent question that I'm getting. I am not and will not run for any office. You've seen all the sound bites that would absolutely sink any chance that I would have for election. That's the point of this rant. I'm supposed to be just thinking, theorizing, talking to you, getting input, then moving forward some theories and some potential solutions. They have nothing to do with political affiliation, running for office. Spider monkey. And so, you've heard, I have thousands of sound bites now already in these 10 rants that can be used against me if I were ever running for election. I really like this particular bully pulpit, as I'm beholden to no one but myself. Thanks and God bless. We'll try and see you next Wednesday, and send me some emails if you would, text and chat. Thank you so much.